Hi, I'm Lily Peterson.
And I'm Paul Wilson. Welcome to Beyond Benefits with Benefits Pro. For this episode, we're talking to Ali Goodwin, Marketing Director for TrueScripts. But first, let's take a few minutes to catch up with my co host, Lily. How are things going in your world, Lily? Something tells me we've been keeping you a little bit busy lately.
Yeah, it's been busy, prepping for the expo. Just had my birthday last week, and of course, I got sick from leaving the apartment. But it's good that it's right in the middle of right after my birthday, but also right before the expo. So it worked out.
Nice. I mean, I guess if you have to be sick, like you said, it's better to have it in one of those in between periods. And we'll have you in fighting form, I think, before we head to Boston.
Oh, yeah, we'll
Speaking
prep.
of, I know we're both really busy, but I'm really looking forward to heading over there. But first, I was going to mention my wife and I the other night got to go to see David Sedaris, who I don't know if you know him, Lily, but he's writes a lot of books. He's hilarious, and so we here in Denver we went to the Paramount Theater and saw him and had a blast. That was actually the second time we've seen him. We saw him it's probably been like 8 years ago, but it was awesome to see him. And I was taking a few notes of his stage presence, as I prepare for my time in Boston.
Yeah, you got to prep, you got to take all the notes, you got to do your
Exactly.
research before.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I love Boston. It's probably one of my favorite cities. I think it's so fun. I'm really excited. Hopefully, we'll have a little bit of free time. Who knows? It's always busy catching up with everyone and, making sure everyone's having a good time. But I just threw together a little, 10 things to do in Boston. One of the things I'm most excited about, I guess, is I kind of want to get to the Boston Public Library, which sounds so nerdy, but it's huge. It's like almost 1 million square feet.
Wow.
That's insane. But it's
That
also like
is.
my book heaven.
I was going to say, it doesn't sound nerdy to me. It's right up my alley. That sounds amazing. I had not heard about that. I knew that Boston obviously has tons of great bookstores because that's obviously on my radar. And I'm going to, after the expo, find some time to hit one or two of those. But you just added a new destination to my wish list because I was looking at the article that you're posting on Benefits Pro, like you mentioned, talking about the 10 things to do. And the little write up you did on the Boston Library and the pictures I'm seeing look amazing. So, yeah, I'm
Yeah,
all about
it
that.
it looks gorgeous. I also think I am a big fan of art museums. Whenever I'm in Chicago, I go to the Art Institute. I just love it so much. But there's this, it's called the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. It's basically just this rich art collector that had lived there, and most of the pieces are still there. And they have like this really beautiful year round courtyard garden right in the middle. It
Wow.
seems really cool. So I kind of want to get there too. But I also think I'm a big beer drinker. Paul, I know you are too. In
Hmm.
terms of food and drinks, I kind of want to get to the Sam Adams Brewery.
Absolutely. Yeah. I have, believe it or not, I've never been to Boston. So this will be my first time ever. So despite both of us being very occupied with expo duties, I'm hoping that we'll be able to find some time in the evenings or at the beginning or end of the trip to find some spots like that. And yeah, Sam Adams is high on my list as well. I'm hoping at the very least at our networking reception and our big benefits pro party, maybe there'll be a few Sam Adams floating around because they're always good. Their seasonal beers are always a great choice, I think.
For sure. And it will taste even better because we're getting it basically right from the source.
Exactly. Yeah. And another thing that I'm excited about, I know a lot of our attendees have been reaching out to me and we have some, sponsored events that are going over to Fenway for the Red Sox. And then I know some people are just going, either ahead of the show or after the show. But obviously being in Boston and hitting the Red Sox at Fenway is always a big bonus for everybody else too. So I think that's going to be another one that'll be high on everybody's priority list.
I agree. And Boston, the Red Sox are playing every night we're there, which is funny
Yeah,
because then they
exactly.
have a bunch of away games going up. But I also am pretty sure, depending on if the Celtics win, because I don't think they won last
Mm,
night, I think they just had a game, but their series should be coming to Boston. So they
there
might
you
be
go.
playing in their playoff games while we're there too, which would be
Oh,
cool.
that's really cool. Yeah, there's some of those great sports cities across the US. Obviously, New York, Chicago, and Boston is one of them. So I'm glad that people are going to take advantage. I mean, one of the reasons that we like to move the expo around every year is just to give people in different parts of the nation a little bit of a spotlight and also to give people an opportunity just to explore some of these cities. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to it. And like we just mentioned, be sure to keep an eye out for all of our pre-show coverage as we head into the expo. And in a moment, we'll talk with our guest, Ali Goodwin, and I will introduce her here in a second, but she will also be speaking. So we talk a little bit about that in our episode. So yeah, all kinds of good stuff just around the road. But let's go ahead and move on to our interview with Ali. Ali Goodwin is the marketing director at TrueScripts. And in this episode, we'll talk about all the noise around PBMs and prescription drugs, the importance of trying to do the right thing in an industry that sometimes makes that a little too difficult, and also the art of guzzling hot sauce live on stage. So we have all of that and more coming up next.
Joining us today is Ali Goodwin. Welcome to Beyond Benefits, Ali. We're so happy to have you here.
Hey guys, thanks. I'm happy to be here.
So, how are things going over at TrueScripts?
TrueScripts is awesome. It's super exciting. We are a PBMs. We're in that pharmacy benefits management space, which is just chock full of surprises. So truly that fun never stops. But it's great because I think we would all take busy overboard any day. And my job it's so fun, an industry full of bad guys. We get to be one of the good guys. And so in a nutshell, I just get to go out and develop relationships by telling our story and helping to pave the way for a better, less sketchy future of pharmacy benefits.
I love that. Speaking of your story, would you mind explaining, a little bit about the company and kind of what you do on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, sure. So, like I said, TrueScripts we're a full service pharmacy benefit manager, of course, playing in that transparent space because what PBM isn't these days. I just celebrated my 5th anniversary with TrueScripts, and I joke, 5 years and 2 weeks ago, I could not have even told you what PBM stood for. So I have been steady drinking from a fire hose for the past 5 years, but it's awesome. I mean, I say, I got here like so many of us by happenstance, and now I'm pissed off with a purpose because once you dig into this space, it's like, oh no, I'm not going anywhere. I've got to ride this one out and see what happens here because it's crazy. It's volatile, but I'm so fortunate to have come on board with one of the good guys because I could have just as easily came on with a traditional PBM and thought, well, hey, it's a job. I learned things that way. And for those that control so much of the marketplace, I would have just thought 80% of America can't be wrong, right? So it's really exciting.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and congrats on your 5-year anniversary. That's super exciting.
Thanks.
Can you share a little bit about, your career journey and how you ended up in the PBM space? Because I feel like literally everyone in this industry will say, I wasn't supposed to be here, and now all of a sudden I'm here. So,
yep. And I have a very similar story. I kind of grew up in the marketing realm, and that's always what I had done. My first real job out of college, I was the marketing director for a QSR franchise, so quick service restaurants. So I headed up the marketing for the likes of Wendy's, Denny's, Long John Silver's. I mean, nothing in the insurance space whatsoever. My closest thing to a PBM was a brief stint as a pharmacy technician while I was in college. So the president and CEO of a company that I worked with prior, he had moved to TrueScripts and was like, hey, you need to come check this company out. They're awesome. They have a phenomenal culture. You'd love it here. Yeah, that sounds great. Just one problem. I have no idea what a PBM is. You're like, it's fine. So many of the team members don't. We're looking for the right kind of people, and then we'll teach you everything else. And truly, in hindsight, it was so great that I got to learn things the right way and didn't have to unlearn anything. But yeah, that's how I got here. And like I said, I don't plan on going anywhere else because this is just one of those things. You got to see this one through.
I love that. I mean, what you just said about kind of that fresh outlook, I know that a lot of people in the industry are actually starting to prioritize that in their hiring because, like you said, you don't have to unlearn any of these bad habits or the old ways of doing things. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it was a silver lining for sure.
Well, and if it helps at all, the whole thing about drinking from a fire hose, I've been covering the insurance industry quite a while now, and I still feel almost every day like I'm like, oh boy.
Yeah, I mean, it changes nonstop.
Yeah, exactly. Well, speaking of that, I mean, the benefits in healthcare space right now is obviously so tumultuous. I mean, I think it always is, but especially so right now. There's a lot of pressures coming in from both inside and outside the industry. So this is a big question, so you can take it however you'd like, but what are you watching right now in this space? Like, what's catching your attention? We'll dig more into the obvious stuff, the PBMs, here in a minute, but I mean, is there any other things that you're watching right now?
Yeah, I mean, you are not lying. Tumultuous is maybe even an understatement. And there's so much to always, look out for and be aware of, whether it's the compliance and legislative concerns that are taking up the headlines as of late. But even, you go back to the general roles and responsibilities of a PBM, and we need to always be watching the market, new drugs that are coming to the market, like the biosimilars, or even just simply keeping up with the crazy influx of all of these new PBMs or pharmacy solution vendors that are popping up all over the place. We've definitely got our work cut out for us. And with all the noise, it can be so difficult to know where to turn your attention to and what to believe or what you shouldn't believe. But for us, it's really just important to, I think, just constantly keeping a pulse on the market and drug trends, because as a PBM, you have to make sure that your formularies and your programs are being actively managed in a way that can sustain this wild, wild world of big pharma. At the end of the day, it's all about having the most cost-effective drugs that are available while still providing great access to care.
For sure. Again, we'll talk about the PBM specifically here in a second, but I was curious, are the tariffs, has any of that been causing any ripples in your world, or right now are you just kind of keeping an eye on it?
Not so much. I mean, right now it's just keeping an eye on it. We have not had, any ripples come through and affect us. I think if we're talking specifics right now, I don't know if you have seen House Bill 1150, I think, just passed in Arkansas, which there was a big thing that came out recently. And they just passed it. And effectively it bans PBMs who also own pharmacies from operating as both the PBM and the pharmacy within that state. So that's huge, because if you look at all of the traditional PBMs, that vertical integration runs rampant. So the fact that this passed and their attorney general is also working to make this a federal issue, that's huge. So we're definitely watching things like that, on a state by state and federal basis.
I mean, so I've been hinting at it, but yeah, let's talk PBMs. Lily and I obviously are constantly scouring the headlines and, keeping an eye on that whole thing that's going on right now. And, the PBMs, most of them are just getting beat up these days, and many would argue rightfully so. So what is your thought on kind of a lot of the negative press that many of the PBMs are getting right now? And how do you guys position yourselves, just like benefits advisors who have struggled with that same thing, where there are these long-term, stereotypes, many of which are true, but then how do you kind of say we're different and actually go out and prove it?
So honestly, I think for those of us who have been doing things the right way, we might be gloating a bit. This might kind of be our "we told you so" moment. Some of these headlines that are coming out, and so it's such a cat and mouse game. And so everyone's, trying to stay ahead of the next move. And so when the shortcomings of the PBMs who have chose profiteering over patient care, when those are coming to light, we're going, hey, like, about time. And it's unfortunate that the wrongdoings of those PBMs, cast a bad shadow on all of us. But also, in my opinion, that's kind of job security for us good guys. It just means we've got to get out there and show how we are different and how we can right the wrongs of those bad actors who have taken their position as middlemen to profit off the needs of others, instead of taking that position as a middleman to help bridge the gaps in patient care. Because if you think about it, doctors aren't pharmacists, and that's okay. However, what's not okay is that they can just prescribe you anything without maybe knowing what it's going to cost you at the pharmacy, maybe even what it's made of. You have the example of Duexis, and it's not okay that they're prescribing you that and maybe not knowing that it's just two over-the-counter drugs. So PBMs, rather than saying, hey, yeah, we're going to put all these dumb drugs on our formulary and cash in, we need to be saying, hey, this drug doesn't really make sense. There is a far more cost-effective or even therapeutically effective version available. Let's go that route. So that's what PBMs should be doing as the middleman, and it's really unfortunate that many of them are not.
Yeah, I agree. Well, during my time covering this industry, I constantly see how important it is to travel and attend these industry conferences and spreading the good word, kind of what you were just talking about. There's things that there's a lot of people don't know and understand about this world. So how many shows do you hit a year, and do you have any upcoming ones that you're super pumped about?
Yeah. So I'd say 10 or so national events each year and some smaller local ones as well. I've been super fortunate to speak at many of those as well, and super excited for Benefits Pro, which is just a few short weeks away. And I'll also be speaking there. I've been so fortunate to become more and more involved in the Benefits Pro Broker Expo each year. And I mean, it's just one of those that I look forward to each year. I've developed so many friends. Actually, fun fact, B Pro in Anaheim. That was my first conference ever once I joined this industry. And so I met so many, I mean, what I truly consider to be near and dear friends at that conference. And we're still close to this day. So that's always one that I look forward to.
Love that. Well, I mean, speaking of, I would love if you'd give a little sneak preview of what you're going to be talking about at the show. I mean, I've been so amazed at the way you've kind of splashed onto the scene. I can't believe you've only been around 5 years, because I feel like I do see you at so many conferences, including on stage, guzzling hot sauce and various other feats of strength. But I mean, could you talk a little bit about what you were just talking about, the way that this industry creates those friendships and those networks, but then kind of use that as a catapult to just talk a little bit about what you're going to be discussing at the expo?
Yeah, they say people do business with people, and you find those people that like, and trust. So I mentioned, when I first came on board with TrueScripts, it was more in a marketing capacity and not necessarily business development. So these relationships that I developed, it wasn't because I had to. I wasn't sent out to develop relationships to make sales. This was all organic. I connected with these people, and we are truly friends. And so it's just awesome. The industry that we've created, the likes of Benefits Pro, Health Rosetta, U Powered Saya, it's all the like-minded individuals. So that you're not in a group with people who are doing this for the wrong reasons. So one, you're aligned in that matter. And then two, I mean, these events do a really good job of creating this fun environment to be in. So it's not all just shop talk and, a snooze fest. We're connecting on such a deeper level that makes everything stick.
Yeah, I agree. I love that. And that's one of the things that I've enjoyed the most about the industry. And I've kind of actually had an evolution. Like, I'll admit, being a bit of an introvert when I first got into the industry, I was a little skeptical of the power of kind of in-person networking. And it wasn't my favorite thing, but just over the course of my career, for the very same reasons you were just describing, I've really come around on that. And, I've come to see the value and develop, like you said, so many friendships that otherwise I never would have been able to even meet these people. So it's amazing.
I know sometimes it's hard, going through the whole COVID era and meeting so many people via LinkedIn or online in some other way. And then you finally get to meet them at a conference. And sometimes I really can't remember, have we actually met in person? And you go up and you feel like you know them, and I would hug some people, and then we would realize, oh, this is actually the first time I've ever even seen you. We're just hugging like we're best friends.
Yeah, no, I've had the exact same experience. I think we've met, but I feel like I know you for sure either way. No, that's amazing. Well, yeah, like I said, I know that was kind of a convoluted question, but yeah, just a quick preview of what you're going to be talking about during your session at the expo would be wonderful.
Yeah, so this session is titled Benefiting from the BS. And the whole point of that is just, going back to all of the wrong and bad things that so many PBMs and even brokers are doing. And so it's leaning into that and leveraging the right PBM strategies to fuel your success. So it's just taking a look at, how to turn all of those challenges that the industry is facing right now into strategic advantages. There's so many misaligned partners in this space that create a huge problem. But those problems can also be opportunities in disguise. So the whole session is just meant to take a look at those conflicts of interest, those questionable practices, so that savvy advisors can kind of flip all that on its head and use them as stepping stones to success. So I'm super excited for it. I'll be moderating the panel. We'll have a benefits advisor, a PBM consultant, and then a self-funded plan sponsor. So they're just kind of dig into everything, give some real world case scenarios, and the idea is, we hope everyone just walks away with some practical strategies and just a better understanding of how to position themselves as a fiduciary ally to their clients and how to steer them away from those bad actors who really don't have their best interests at heart.
I'm getting excited just thinking about it. I mean, we've had a lot of attendees who've asked us for more substantive content. The inspirational stuff is good and we will continue to do that. But a lot of people are asking for some real world experience, like you just said, and some practical takeaways. So I think your session is an example of one of many this year that we've really made a move towards that. So yeah, so excited for that one.
You guys, there's always lots of good sessions. So I'm excited for those as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think you spend a lot of time, like we were just saying, your session at the expo, but you spend a lot of time presenting innovative and disruptive ideas. How do you think people's willingness to change has shifted over the past couple of years?
It can still be a battle for sure. Not everyone is always willing to jump into those new, innovative ideas, because unfortunately, a lot of times innovation can mean some disruption, but you can't always think of disruption as a negative. We got to shake things up a little bit. But I think at this point, it's being proven that just turning a blind eye and letting everything roll is not going to cut it anymore. Like these brokers and employers are being forced out of their comfort zones, which is awesome. But now the good guys need to be sure that we are there to meet them before they're welcomed into the light by another wolf in sheep's clothing. So we have our work cut out for us, that's for sure. But I think everyone is starting to make that transition onto the good side.
Yeah. Well, where do you see the most pushback then from brokers, employers, employees?
So it's hard, and I don't necessarily want to call it pushback, but you got to think there's when you talk about doing things the right way, there's a big learning curve there. And so getting everyone on board with, taking the time to understand why these traditional solutions aren't cutting it, that takes a lot of time and effort. And the time and effort that you are spending on learning that means, for a broker, that means time taken away from making additional sales. And then on the employer side, if it's the HR director who's over this, think of how many other plates they are trying to keep spinning at this time. So trying to dive in and learn the pharmacy benefits realm and why these innovative solutions are better than what you have traditionally experienced. That's a big ask of them. So I wouldn't necessarily say that there's pushback, but it's just getting everyone to dedicate their time to learning something new.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, even the benefits advisors and others who I talk about who are kind of the leaders of this leading edge of the industry, they'll be the first to admit this is not easy. This is a lot of work. And so, yeah, I could see I think that's a valid point that you brought up, is just, it's not always that people are pushing back. It's just intimidating, confusing, and it takes a while to develop. But I do think that that's where the power of people like you and a lot of the benefits advisors that we talk to, who are so good at kind of storytelling and giving examples to kind of walk people through and kind of meet them where they are in their journey, but then help them continue to move ahead. I think that's vital.
Yeah.
One more kind of topical thing that I wanted to talk about was just the whole GLP-1 craze that's been going on. Our coverage of that on Benefits Pro continues to perform so well. There's clearly a lot of interest from employers and advisors and others in the industry around that. So what's your take on where it stands, and any predictions? I know it's pretty hard to predict because it's moving so fast, but yeah, where do things stand and what's happening next?
Yeah, gosh, GLP-1s, that is such a hot topic. And they're just going to keep gaining more recognition. I think I think the usage will continue to increase, and they have a lot of success. So, you can't argue that, but I think that usage will continue to increase even more so as these healthcare providers continue to see the benefits that they have in managing diabetes, managing weight loss, managing cardiovascular risks. I've seen recently that, and I forget which one it was, but they're going to start using it to treat gambling addictions. And so it just these indications are growing like crazy. And so there's additional approvals for, the conditions like heart disease or even the neurological conditions. So on the PBM side, I think we're just going to have to continue being super agile and innovative in how to manage these drugs and along with their new indications, and making sure that the patients have access to the right treatments, but then also not letting the spin just run rampant throughout a plan.
Yeah, that's one of the questions I was going to ask about. That is just, I know there's a lot of back and forth right now about the employer responsibility and the exorbitant costs in many cases of these drugs. I mean, do you see that leveling out at some point, or is it too early to tell? Do you think that there's going to be a world where there's going to be a happy medium where they're going to be something that most employers can even afford to have on their plan?
Yeah, I don't know. And I think it depends on the employer as well, because we have some that come in and say, no, I don't want to cover these for anything other than type 2 diabetes. And so we'll put prior authorizations in place and say, hey, if your A1C isn't at this level and you're not needing to use this drug as treatment for type 2 diabetes, it will not be offered, period. But then you also have a lot of employers that are saying, they do see the value in using these drugs for, weight loss. And so we need to adjust the parameters there. And then is it okay? Well, you don't just want to completely open the floodgates. Is there an additional wellness program that we attach to that to make sure that this patient is also leading a healthy lifestyle with diet and exercise? And then you have some employers who are what seems to be using this as an employment strategy. They need people in their door, and this is an incentive saying, hey, we cover these drugs. We want to cover them for weight loss, no parameters. We want to cover them for XYZ. And so navigating all of that, it needs to be done on an employer by employer basis. And then also, just as us as the PBM, just being there to say, hey, ultimately it's your choice, but how can we help you? One, contain costs as much as possible. Two, ensure that the members who are using this medication or any medication are using it safely and effectively.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And that's a really interesting point that you just made about the retention and recruitment side of things. I hadn't thought about that, but
Yeah.
makes sense.
Well, kind of switching gears a little bit, we talk with our guests a lot, despite the growing optimism and excitement of the way the industry is changing. The actual day-to-day reality of creating the change is tough and grueling. How do you stay motivated and not get discouraged or intimidated while trying to help change the industry?
Yeah, so I think that this goes back a bit, to the question you asked before on, how everyone's appetites for shifting into these innovative ideas. And again, doing things the right way involves a big learning curve. And so when you look at how things have historically been done, these brokers and employers have relied heavily on spreadsheeting exercise for years. And now to come in and tear that apart and get everyone to understand why a PBM that maybe shows up exponentially better on a sheet of paper is not actually the best option, that can take a lot of time. And again, that time that you're spending learning and understanding all of that is essentially another job that you're maybe not getting paid for. And so, and you have so much other stuff on your plate. And if you think about, the point between not knowing something and knowing and fully understanding something, that space in the middle, can just really be defined as a feeling of frustration. I understand it's easy to want to give up and just hit that easy button. But I also think that anyone worth their salt knows that great things don't come easy. So it's all about finding, one, the right partners who are in it for the right reason. And then two, being able to resonate with them and fine tune your approach in a way that makes them feel comfortable and empowered. Because once we're comfortable and empowered together and we've gone past that point of frustration and into that point of understanding, dude, we are unstoppable.
I love it. Well, that does tie into kind of the next question. You've talked a little bit about transparency. That part of it is probably pretty obvious. That's a buzzword that is all over the place these days. But another one is the idea of being a fiduciary. And I definitely know that from the advisor point of view. I mean, that is something that many of the people who we talk to every day are working actively to get into that space, or they're already there. What does the fiduciary side of things mean to you? And you were talking about the bad actors in the industry. There are people that are using the terms transparency and fiduciary and some of these other terms and maybe watering them down because they're not actually doing what they say they're doing. So I would just love to hear your thoughts on kind of what all of that means to you, and how do you and your company kind of make sure that you're truly doing what those words mean.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there, Paul. Especially when it comes to transparency, I wouldn't even say so much watered down as dang near ruined. Everyone's touting it, and it seems to come with an eye roll these days. We're
Right.
transparent, okay? And you know what? I've even seen PBMs that they are transparent, and you read through their contract, and they are telling you that they are going to engage in spread pricing. I mean, that's transparent. So, how are you really defining it? And I think honestly, tossing around the term fiduciary might irk me even a little more because you see all these lawsuits that are coming out, and it's always, for breach of fiduciary duty by the employer. So these PBMs coming out and, saying that they are fiduciaries. Okay, that's great. I think that all PBMs should act in a fiduciary manner. However, under ERISA, PBMs are not legal fiduciary entities. Putting that word in your marketing materials is worth about just as much as the piece of paper that it's printed on. So, if push ever comes to shove, if your PBM, markets that they are a fiduciary, legally they are not, and so they won't be held liable. I think what's more important is contractually obligating yourselves to transparency and serving as an aligned partner. And that's the route that, TrueScripts has taken. Yes, again, going back to, I think that all PBMs should serve in a fiduciary manner and in a way that helps their clients uphold their fiduciary duty. And I think that, that just means removing those conflicts of interest, removing those misaligned incentives that prevent you from making decisions that are in the best interest of the client and the member. Because at the end of the day, when you talk about transparency, it's all about transparency in the dollars spent, not empty promises. What does your PMPM spend look like? Not what do your marketing materials say that you will do for me?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a great answer.
Yeah. Earlier, you said that, you didn't start out in the space like basically everyone in this, industry. But how has your career path in the PBM space specifically so far helped you shape your current mindset?
Oh, it's totally shaped my mindset. Like I said, not coming from this space at all, I could have just as easily gone to work for one of the big three and cut my teeth on the industry with them. And that would have been the space that I learned everything in. Learning what a PBM was with one of them, I can't even imagine how vastly different my mindset would be. Would I know it? I don't know. Because you think of the folks that work with the big three, and I imagine a lot of them are very good people. And so I don't think that they're inherently bad sales folks with the big three PBMs, but you don't know what you don't know. And so if I had grown up with them instead of one of the good guys like TrueScripts, yeah, I truly can't imagine where my mindset would be in comparison to where it is today.
I love that honesty. And I think that's a really important point that a lot of people in the industry may not pick up on is it's so easy to get into an us versus them mindset. And I understand it because the frustration with the status quo and the way that things go builds up. But I think it's a great point of just a lot of it is just the people that you're around, and a lot of the people who are in those spaces. It's not necessarily that they're bad people or that they're purposefully doing something to obstruct progress. It's just they're doing their best in the situation they're in. So yeah, thanks for saying that. I think that's important. So speaking of kind of these movements in the industry, this industry has for a long time been known as pretty stodgy and stuck in a rut and reluctant to change. I personally feel like it is shifting. I've used this term before, but it feels like a grassroots movement to me a little bit. Like there are, like you said, there's the Health Rosettas of the world and the U Powards and the Benefits Pros who are giving spotlights to people who are doing the right thing. So I do think it's shifting. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. And then also just how do we keep this momentum going and make sure that we don't get pulled back into old habits or get overrun by the status quo?
Yeah, it's definitely shifting, and you can feel when you leave somewhere like the Benefits Pro Broker Expo, I think everyone, they feel energized. And so I think that momentum is growing. You see the state of healthcare in America, and I think we can all agree it's not great. It's not even good in a lot of aspects. And so I believe a lot of us are being inspired by the poor state that we and our neighbors are in and how we've been affected by the US healthcare system. And so using those hard times as inspiration has generated a lot of momentum. And then all of these groups that are building their following, like Be Pro and Health Rosetta, that shift cannot be ignored. And then also you have, like I mentioned earlier, some of these employers and advisors that are being forced out of their comfort zone by some of these legislative advances, or even some of these lawsuits. You look at the J&J, the Wells Fargo, the JP Chase Morgan, where an employee has sued their employer for breach of fiduciary duty. Well, it's causing a lot of fear and uncertainty where folks are no longer able to ignore what's going on. And so even if they were reluctant to change, they're going, hey, we're not willing to have our name in the next headline. We've got to make a shift. So the momentum is going, it's gaining steam just from all of the awesome people in this industry. And then also, so we have the care approach, and then we also have the stick approach. And so I think just to keep that going, we need to one, keep everyone, Paul, like the things that you do with BPro, keep that going. There's so many great articles and podcasts out there they're so inspiring and educational. And then two, everyone that it's involved from the legislative side, just keep being loud. Don't let anything get pushed under a rug. And I think we'll get there. We'll continue to get there.
Yeah, I love that.
I really appreciate the enthusiasm about changing this industry and, being a part of that. But before we move on to what Paul and I would consider the fun part of the episode, where, we get kind of personal, we ask every guest this sentence, or at least to finish this sentence. The thing that makes me most excited about the future of our industry is...
The thing that makes me most excited about the future of our industry is this continuous growing shift towards true transparency and true alignment with the needs of employers and their members. And it's creating that environment where we can finally move away from all the BS, all the conflicts of interest, and focus on delivering real value and better health outcomes for everyone involved. Sorry, that was probably definitely a run-on sentence.
No, you nailed it. You said exactly perfect. I loved it. All right. Well, like Lily said, this is the part that we always consider to be the fun part of the interview. We've had mixed feedback on that because I think some people maybe get a little nervous talking about themselves. But Ali, I know you. I have a feeling you're going to be right in your sweet spot here. So here we go. As we touched on earlier, this industry can be rough on people. It's a grind to create change and to do the right thing. In your LinkedIn bio, you describe yourself as an outdoor enthusiast and a lover of all things cheesy, food and jokes. So I need to hear a little bit more about that, tying into how do you relax and refresh when you're outside of work.
Yeah, so just getting outside whenever possible is my reset. I mean, that's just critical to my mental health, physical health, keeping somewhat sane whatsoever. I love being outdoors. And yeah, listen, you could cover a rock in cheese and I'd probably have a dozen of them. So,
I would be right there with you. I love that. Are you a hiker? Are you a camper? Are you a skier? Like all of the above?
yes. So skiing looks a little bit probably like a newborn giraffe on roller skates for me, but I am willing to do it all. Am I good at it? No, but yeah, snow skiing, water skiing, if and when I can, but really big on hiking, camping. I have a side by side, so do a lot of just feral stuff down in the river bottoms. And, outside of being a professional, I'm really just kind of just a hick, Paul.
I love it. I love it. No, that's great. I love seeing, occasionally when you post some photos on LinkedIn that are, more about the you outside of the business. I always appreciate that. So I'm here
I
for it.
love seeing that as well. I love when people do that. And I hate when there's some comments on here. This is not LinkedIn content. Get
Yeah,
out of here.
It's
exactly.
all LinkedIn
It's
content.
all
Come on
LinkedIn.
now.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what industry or business book would you recommend, or maybe just a book for fun?
Ooh, so this actually came up. So I spoke at the SIA Future Leaders Conference last week, and this got brought up. But Who Moved My Cheese? And, it's a short, kind of silly book, but when you're thinking about the challenges of management and leadership and professional life, it's a good book.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Do you read any outside of like nature or sports or like, because if not, I have some recommendations I can make to you offline if you're into nature writing. I'm a big fan of it. So,
I do read, but most of what I read outside of the professional realm is just trash, just some
yeah.
murder mystery fiction.
I get it.
Yeah, reading is reading. It's all good
Yeah,
stuff. But yeah, I will send you, if you're interested, I will send you some nature writing that you may like. Yeah.
I would love it.
Cool. All right. I'm going to give you the option here. Do you want to talk movies and TV or do you want to talk music?
Music,
Okay.
100%.
All right. What's a album or a song that you have on repeat right now constantly? What's your go-to tune these days?
Oh gosh. So I know we're in April now, but it doesn't seem like that far away. So Spotify always does the Spotify
Mhm.
Wrapped, and my number one song of 2024 was Jersey Giant. And there are a ton of different versions of that song.
Okay.
Specifically, the one that I apparently played over and over was Jersey Giant by Evan Honer and Julia D something. I can't remember what her last name is, but
Nice.
my music taste is just it's totally off the wall. I mean, there's not a genre that I am committed to. It can go from Juicy J to Johnny Cash real quick.
I love it. No, I'm the same way. When you have a playlist and it's like gives you a whiplash when it switches between songs, I feel like that's when you're doing it right.
Exactly. You get
Nice.
it.
Well, as we discussed earlier, this job involves a fair amount of travel. What is the best trip you've ever taken for fun, not for work, or maybe for work?
Ooh, so I always try to pick a bucket list hike each year. And last year was one of my favorites to date. We went to Washington State and hiked to Lake Kolchak. And so it was just one of those, everywhere you looked around, it looked fake, like postcard material, just the like, you get up there and you're hiking through the mountains, and all of a sudden you come out and there's this ice blue water surrounded by snow capped mountains and phenomenal.
I gotta ask, when you backpack, how much does your pack weigh? Is that too personal?
I don't think I've ever weighed my bag,
Okay,
so I
that's probably a
couldn't
good
tell you.
idea.
But
Yeah.
there's some always just some ridiculous stuff in there. We have this tradition where there's always a pickleback shot
Oh,
packed in my backpack. So when you reach the top of the mountain, we take pickleback shots, which, if you're not familiar with, is a shot of Jameson chased by a shot of pickle juice.
that's amazing.
Classic.
I think I need to go on a hike with you. Yeah,
Classic.
I
I
love
love
that.
it.
That's so funny. Normally, I take those in a very dingy, dark bar, but you know what? On a top of the mountain sounds much better.
Totally different experience.
I love
Great
it.
in either place, nonetheless.
Exactly. Any fun trips that you're planning anytime soon? Do you have anything in the works for this summer or?
Yeah, so actually, this September, I am going to hike through the Havasupai Indian Reservation to Havasupai Falls. And so each year they do a lottery because they only give out, there's only so many passes allowed for folks to hike in each year. And they open it up February 1st every year, like 8 a.m. And the site always crashes because everyone's trying to get their reservation at once. And so for 7 years now, I've tried to get one, and I got one this year. So I am
Oh,
pumped about that.
amazing. That sounds great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Ali, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope soon we can get together for some cheese and pickleback shots of
I would
some
love that,
nature.
Paul.
Yeah,
And you know what? I'll be seeing you in a couple of weeks. So
that's true. We might have to make it happen.
I like it.
Yeah, thank you so much. We really appreciate you joining us.
No, thank you guys so much for having me. This has been awesome.
For all of our listeners, please subscribe to Beyond Benefits with Benefits Pro anywhere you get your podcasts. And if you want to rate us, we'd love your feedback. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email me over at pwilson@benefitspro.com, or you can email Lily at lpeterson@alm.com.
And thank you to our producer, Zach. Join us again next time for a new episode of Beyond Benefits with Benefits Pro. Until then, thanks for listening.